Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a great session, very passionate to each and every one of us. Great panelists over here. And with that, have do I'll pass it on to everybody here to go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll kick it in with our great initiative discussion. So let me start with you, Nia, please.
So, hi everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to dial into this, right? But a little bit about me. My name is Nia Luckey, and I am the Security Operations Center Manager for U.S. Public Sector at Cisco. I do a lot more than that, but we'll get into that in this discussion, I'm sure. So I'm going to pass it to Will.
Hey, I'm Will Ogle. I work for EY, and I'm a cybersecurity practitioner and a manager for Ernst & Young.
Thank you. Terry?
And
Oh, go ahead, William. Sorry.
Okay.
You good? Okay.
I'm good.
That's awesome. Terry?
Hey, Terry West. I'm with Tech Systems, an IT services company. I am an inclusion and diversity manager, so excited to spend a little bit of time with you all this afternoon.
Awesome. Go ahead, Mansi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mansi Thakar. Though my daytime jobs have mostly been in corporations, I spend my free time with smaller organizations that are at the intersection of diversity and tech. Currently, I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, whose mission is to holistically amplify technical and soft skills in the field. You can find me in the summers at DEF CON at pulling cables, not this year because it's virtual. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Great panelists, as you can see, my dear audience, and thank you so much for taking time to join us. Let me introduce myself. My name is Noureen Njoroge. I'm a cybersecurity consultant here at Cisco System with specialty on threat intelligence. I like mentoring others, so feel free to join us in our mentoring group, both on LinkedIn, Global Network. Glad to help everyone here. With half of ado, we'll proceed into our discussion, and feel free to drop any questions that you may have as we continue in the conversation today, so that we can be able to address them in between our conversations and at the end, right? So we want this to be a dialogue, not just a monologue. We don't want to just talk at you. We want to have that conversation going back and forth. Having said that, we know cybersecurity is a very interesting journey, and it has different paths. People take different paths when they start in this career, and sometimes it can be a hurdle for many. Where do I begin? How do I transition? Who are there to help me, and what have you? We have some set of questions which we've prepared just to help people navigate through this industry and understand what are these hurdles and how we can make it better. One of them is just to have an advocate. It's very important to have somebody to advocate for you in this industry. There are some challenges and there are some successes. Having said that, Nia, do you have any tips or advices about anybody who would like to advocate for others in this industry?
Absolutely. So that's kind of what got me to where I am, is leaning on mentors and advocates, right? I made a drastic career transition after 13 years that had nothing to do with the industry I'm in right now. So I reached out through organizations like ISSA and WSC to kind of learn where I could. So because one of the bigger observations I've made is on a lot of the teams, I was, one of maybe 3 women, right? So it's always interesting to me to gain other perspectives and then to make that a part of who I am as either in whatever role I'm filling, right? So it doesn't matter if I'm a member of a team or I'm leading a team, it doesn't matter. Everything I learn, I want to bring back and I want to incorporate. So even if it's just challenges on how to have a conversation, right, with a male coworker or a female boss, which I didn't really get a lot of exposure to in the military, but definitely have a lot of exposure to now that I'm in a more corporate setting, right? But it's small things like that. It's finding people like you, Noureen, and Will, and leaning on both of you as advocates, learning from you, growing from the conversations, and then applying it to the team that I now get to lead and be a part of. So.
Great. And when it comes to advocacy, it's a term that's awfully misused sometimes, right? So there's an advocate and there's a mentor. And I would like just to broach the light to the audience what we really mean by advocate. Advocate is somebody who can vouch for you, who can speak on your behalf, who can, if you're applying for a job and you're looking for that position right there, somebody you've been working with in a mentoring maybe relationship, or your manager or your fellow coworker, or somebody who you meet at conferences like ISSA for sure, and you've been working with them on a networking perspective, and they can vouch for you maybe if you're applying for a particular job. William, I'd like to hear your input in this when advocating a lot. We like men allies in this industry of cybersecurity, and I would like to hear an input from you. What do you think about advocacy and any success story you have for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And being an advocate for change is not an easy task, and there's trust that has to be built, and having difficult conversations in many cases to say, I challenge your opinion in a very fair debate or in that communication, and building those trusted relationships and having those conversations. And sometimes it may mean going to a smaller group and building that trust and building that communication. But advocacy and inclusiveness is something that is vital to the success of any organization, and having the challenging the status quo, being an advocate for, specifically as we look and approach diversity, is one of those topics where in the IT community, much of the IT community, and you can look at any HR diagram, is people that look like me, to be very candid. And so how do we bring a different space, a different place of diversity into the IT community? And that starts with the organization and leadership and management. It's a top-down approach in many cases, and understanding that if it can be managed, it can be measured. And once it's measured as a baseline, to say, well, we need to start with hiring practices. We need to work with HR, especially from an IT perspective. We need to work with HR because there's so much talent out there, and so much underutilized and marginalized people out there that need to have a voice and need to be heard, in my opinion. And there's, with large organizations like the one I work for, it's easier to make those changes, in my opinion, as far as being taking it to leadership, and leadership making the change. And my organization has done that, but in some cases with smaller organizations, there's challenges with leadership and having those difficult discussions and being an advocate. And sometimes you have to take it upon yourself to be that advocate and hold the organization to a higher standard than it has been. And being honest, having a very truthful conversation about what that is and what that means to you individually, what that means to the organization, and how you as an advocate can help the organization for a brighter future for that. And in addition to that, you're bringing bright people into the organization that have have a drive, have a very strong drive for the future, and those opportunities. If anybody's seen any HR prints for, hey, this is a junior job, we need 15 years of experience in IT, that is absolutely ridiculous.
Right?
That's absolutely ridiculous. A college kid, or a young adult, or somebody transitioning from another field, that's a perfect opportunity in those junior IT positions to get your feet wet and test those things out. So that's my take on it.
Awesome. Thank you. I like the way you say we should be the ones stepping out and speaking out. And if you don't see it happening, be the change, right? So when others see you stepping forward, they follow you. And in this industry, in cybersecurity, honestly, even the cyber attackers are diverse, right? They have a team of diversity. So cyber attacks are diverse. So we need to be diverse, bring different mindsets, different ideas, different perspectives, and we get greater teams. Terry, I would like to swing on your side for a minute. On the recruiting side, I know that's usually an interesting side of perspective of view when you're attracting this diversity. What are maybe I can pick it up, and I'm sure I didn't discuss this with you, but I like sometimes throwing a curveball. What are the challenges on your perspective you see for the recruiters? I mean, you guys have the job descriptions, you're already recruiting the people, but what is maybe one or two things that you can advise the audience to do so they can stand out from the crowd for many who are applying for that specific job?
Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to what Nia talked about, and just making sure that you've got a mentor, make sure you're networking, with the right people that are making those hiring decisions. Making sure you're getting involved in the community. Many of our employers now, they want to see CSR, they want to see your community involvement and the things that you're passionate about outside of just actually doing the day-to-day IT work. And so I think it's important, as you're looking for that next opportunity, it's how are you going to differentiate yourself, right? How are you going to stand out? And so the more things like that you can put on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, the better. And so those are some of the things for me that come to mind in terms of making you stand out. I also think there are a ton of, how should I say it, workforce organization type programs, nonprofits out there. I know we partner with a ton of them across the country that give opportunity to those in the underrepresented community that may not have had that opportunity. And so the other part of that is making sure that your client is on board with bringing in potentially a more of a junior resource, a resource that maybe doesn't have that 15 years experience that Will talked about, right? To make sure that you're willing to bring them in, train them up, and give that opportunity. But ultimately, you've got to be intentional. When you talk about inclusion and diversity, which, I spent most of my career on the sales side of things for IT, and I wanted to make a different impact. And so I jumped over to more of this corporate side. And so really what I spend my time on is engaging our clients, talking to them about their inclusion and diversity strategy to make sure that, hey, one, I have an understanding, right? Everybody wants to bring in someone who's diverse. But then I start to talk about that inclusion plan. Hey, what's your plan to make sure that those people actually stay? Because we don't want to just provide you talent. We want to make sure that talent comes, they stay, and ultimately they flourish and they move up in the organization.
Awesome. Yes. So retention is key. Somebody's audio can. Okay, we're good. Yeah, retention is key. Don't just bring people to the organization and then 2-3 months they're gone. So that's good. And I like what did you say, Terry? You talk to the hiring managers, the hiring organizations, enlighten them the importance of bringing diversity. And if they're asking for this, what I like to call unicorn kind of people in the cybersecurity, right? Try and talk to them and say, even though you have 10 requirements for your job, and I have a candidate who can meet 5, the other 5 they can learn while they're on the job, right? So
absolutely
encourage those kind of opportunities, and it will make it better, because you don't want to hire me to come to your organization to do threat intelligence, that which I already do, and there's somebody else who wants to learn about it and they're already showing, they're progressing towards it. You want to give them an opportunity. And I like the term opportunity. I always encourage others and my mentors, always be prepared for an opportunity that you do not have, than have an opportunity presented to you and you're not ready. We've had situations whereby a job opens up and I reach out to my mentors. Hey, I've been mentoring you for a while. Here's a position. Go for it. And because I've been working with them for a while, they get the job. Have I had instances where I showcase others and they're not ready? Yeah, So you, on the other side, you have to prepare yourself, just as Terry said. You have to always be ready so that when that opportunity knocks, you're good. Moving on, there are barriers in this industry, to be honest with you. We can sugarcoat it all, say cybersecurity is good, the best security, you want to join and all that stuff. But there are barriers. When I entered in the industry, I looked around, there were very, very few females. And not only just female, people of color too, right? Me, in addition, I spice it up with I even have an accent. So I have layers and layers of situations here, but you have to be the barrier breaker. And I want to switch it up a little to Nia. what has helped you like stand out in your organization, and what challenges did you have to overcome to break through in this industry? Because there are many who are looking out there and say, wow, how did you make it? How can I be on that same seat that you're on?
You're absolutely correct. I spoke on that for about 15 minutes in my session yesterday alone. A very non-traditional journey, but it's exactly what you just said. You have to recognize the barrier for what it is and not be afraid of it, right? And that takes a lot. It takes a lot to say, "Ooh, you're scary. I don't like this, but I want to overcome it." And what do I need to do that? Is it something I need to change? Do I need to grow? Do I need to learn? Do I need to expand? Is it something we need to meet in the middle on, right? Because every personality, this panel is a great example. We're not all the same cookie cutter person, right? We all have our own experiences, our own backgrounds, our own challenges, our own everything. Your barriers are not my barriers. But the only way to break through them is to find a way to have the conversation and to put words in a way that it's not coming across as you're complaining, or you don't want it to come across in a negative light because you're trying to fix it, right? And I've learned that that was probably my first barrier. Was I was coming across very abrasive and very difficult to communicate with. And so I started building my network, right? Kind of going off of what Terry was saying, like build that network, find your friends, find the people that get you, right? And that can help you put words to what you're trying to accomplish. And that's been instrumental in my success to where I am right now. And, in my career, it took a lot of mentors and advocates. That's how I got the job position I have now, was and somebody advocated for me, right? It wasn't Nia put my resume in directly. No, it was, hey, I know a really talented person, and yes, I'm out the door, but you might want to give her a shot. And totally unexpected, right? But it was because I was working on those barriers. If I hadn't broken down those barriers and shown improvement and willingness to grow and have that grit and that work ethic and all those things that every employer loves, right? Then obviously that person I doubt would have vouched for me. But I put in the work and I'm here today. But I say that all just to circle back to find the people to have the conversations with to help you break through them. Because if you're trying to break through your own barriers by yourself, it can get very isolating, very lonely, and you could spiral, right? And so I think that's where, as a veteran, I'm different than a lot of other my veteran peers, right? Once I recognized I was spiraling and I was losing control of what my goal was, I started having those conversations and I started leaning on my network and growing my network. So
Awesome. Thank you for those tips. I'd like to hear from Mansi. I know we all come from a different perspective and different career paths. Mansi, how did you break through in this industry?
Yeah, so I so echo the sentiments that the others have shared, that really we want to be diverse and we want to accept our diversity ourselves. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but so back in grad school, I had a chance to do this cross-country road trip in a bright green RV, interviewing leaders in the cybersecurity field for a PBS documentary. And in that's when I came to know that like most of the CEOs, like the NSS Labs, Vikram Pathak, right? I think he did it in economics or something. There was someone else who's like a big threat intelligence analyst, but he came from an anthropology background. And I myself come from a chemistry background. So that was my initial track when life put me into cybersecurity. And I think outside of that, people are saying that, oh, I need to have, or there's certain limitations, right? Either because we look at the job descriptions and we say, wow, these level of years of experience or this level of knowledge before I can apply. But then there's things that we can just do at where we are. And I think I learned that the hard way, where I was like, okay, how do I get into, I'm in grad school, how do I get that internship? How do I make that internship last into a full-time opportunity? And I got involved in the local ISACA chapter. I got involved in the WSE organization. And that really doesn't take years of experience or years of knowledge, right? You just need to have that passion. And I think if you have the passion for anything, the barriers, or at least the roads to, the barriers do get broken down for sure. And then even being the COO of an international organization, I would have never dreamed of it. If someone asked me, I'm like, I don't know what made me it, right? But it's just having that passion, saying, no, what if I do this? Early on, I wanted to be more involved in when I was as an intern or as an early, like the first step in the door kind of thing. And my manager was like, no, just, these are your responsibilities and you stick to it. And so 9 to 5 and then that's it. And I was like, okay, but I want to do more. How do I do more? So I actually cornered the CISO, and maybe a little bit more on the aggressive tactic, but I was new and I was just like young puppy. I was like, I want to do more. So I was like, hey, so Can I just take a few minutes and can you grab lunch? Like lunch on me. I'm so excited to be part of your organization. Let's just talk. And he was so taken aback. I thought he would like dismiss me and say, yeah, okay, whatever, newbie, go away. But he's like, no, I'll take you up on that. And we ended up having lunch. And he's like, no one has ever asked me that. So I think, again, many of the barriers that we not only see outside, but a lot of it is our own mental ones, where we think that I can't approach a certain person because of their title or because they just look like mean, so I can't really approach them. But that's not the case at all, right? Everyone is passionate. If they're in this field, especially in this field, right? If you're in this field, you're passionate about it. So I think if you connect with someone else's passion, that will help bring that support system to break down the barriers. But I definitely echo what Nia said, that at the end of the day, you have to do the hard work for sure. No one's going to be there like, all right, I'll break it down with you, but they can all act as your support system. Even in the meetings. So earlier I was very shy in the meetings, and many people are, right? Or if you share something, someone else will say the same thing, but they'll like cut you off. And I was like, okay, now I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to speak again or not? So I learned this tactic of like meeting with one of the friendlier folks in the meeting prior to them, like, hey, these are my ideas. What do you think? And then that way during the meeting, if you share something and if it's going sideways, something, you have your supporter or, your friendly face to be like, no, didn't Mansi say this? What about that? And so those kind of even smaller conversations, I think, help bring and break barriers.
Awesome. I like what you said in the meeting, asking questions. I remember when I was in college, all throughout my school career, the teacher will ask, anybody has any other questions other than Noureen? Because they knew I had a question, right? One, maybe I spaced out when the teacher was talking, or I'm curious, right? And honestly, curiosity is what got into me into cybersecurity. I was very inquisitive. I was working as a sysadmin, but I really wanted to find out what is this ransomware attacks. They keep searching and all that stuff. They keep chasing and all that have you. And during my curiosity, that's how I landed into cyber, because they saw my passion, my inquisitive, and took me in the team and granted me the opportunity. So ask those questions. And like Nia said, have a support group, right? I always call them have your ones, the twos, and threes. Who are your ones? Your ones are the people you look unto, right? Mansi said she talked with the CSO somewhere one day, right? Those ones you look unto, I want to be like that person one day when I grow up. When we were little, we had these dreams. Let's keep on dreaming. I want to be a pilot. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a this. Keep on dreaming those dreams, right? So those are your ones, those you aspire to be like. Then your twos are the people who can tell you, Nia, please cut it down a little bit because you're becoming too much. What that person is saying, they have a point of view. Please listen to the other side of them, what they have to say, right? Have your twos who adjust your dial tone, where it's supposed to be, right? And your threes are your mentees, right? Because it's always good to pay back. It's always good to pay it forward. It's always good to help others. Remember, we rise by helping others, right? Hey, reach out to the community, like Terry said. Now, employers are not only looking at your resume and the degree that you have, right? But what are you doing beyond that? In these COVID times, it's such an interesting situation where maybe you've lost your job. Maybe you just graduated and you're having a hard time to land a position. If you come to me and I'm hiring for a position, I'll ask you a general question. Give me 2-3 things of security that's happening in the landscape. If you can speak on that, then clearly you have the degree, but I don't see you putting a little effort, right? Or what have you done to give back to the community? Because when you come into a big organization like Ernst Young, Cisco, what have you, we want to see you giving back to the community, because as a community, we make the industry better, right? And that speaks more so of you as a human being, because if I place you in a team, that tells me, are you going to share your knowledge with others, or are you going to confiscate everything to yourself, right? So great advice, great tips. great initiative, and always be prepared. Another thing I wanted to ask William. In your organization, do you guys have like a resource group where people of diversity, or where you guys address this diversity challenge? Because it's a monster that needs to be addressed, right? And speak out. I always say here for myself, some of us were born to be the voice for the voiceless. I may not have all the degrees. I may not have those high chair or positions in an organization. But one thing I do, I have a voice. I can advocate for others. But I would like to hear from William. In honesty, and do you guys have such a resource organization that handles such diversity issues?
Absolutely, and it goes all the way down to the local level, to our local offices. And in my experience, we have spoken to very challenging, well, more specifically, the challenging circumstances that have happened over the last few months. And I don't want to delve into that too deeply, but I do want to touch on the subject matter that we do have voices that speak to this, and I specifically move things off of my calendar so that I can be a part of these conversations. Not so much to have a voice for myself, but to understand that there are different perspectives and different takes on this, that just because I'm an introvert and most IT people are, that in some cases we put our head in the sand with some of these issues and just it'll go away. But with these specific things that have happened recently and as of late, getting an understanding of other people's perspective on this, and more specifically, we all could have, we all need to express our opinion. Specifically on these instances. So we do have specific groups that do speak to that and educate really for people that are not with the heartbeat of what's really going on in society, and bring us up to speed in some cases to inform us of what's going on. So we do, because and that's one of the advantages of a larger organization. In some cases with a smaller organization, we had Nia and I, Nia's the president of one of our sister organizations to the Triad, and I'm the vice president. We had an issue come up, and it was a very sensitive issue. And, we took it to heart and said, let's look at this from as a leadership role, and what's the best thing to do in this specific case. In many cases, when these specific issues come up, it's a case-by-case type of thing, and you have to look at it. But because we are in a position of leadership, there's much more responsibility of what's the impact of the organization, what's the impact to our community, right? Who is affected by this, and is this something that can be resolved with a conversation? Is this something that needs to be resolved with our intervention as managers or leaders in the organization? Because the organization looks to us as leaders, and I know some of you guys on the phone call are leaders as well in some of these small organizations. But it's a different take when you have a much larger organization with a ton of resources to help out versus a smaller organization where you have to take it upon yourself and be an advocate for not just you as the organization, but an advocate for all parties involved, to include the community at large. And our community in cybersecurity we're small knit group, right? So especially in the Raleigh in the Triad area, that if you're not, I don't know not cool. I'll use the DEF CON. If you're not cool, everybody knows you're not cool, and you should go or learn to be cool, right?
Right.
And again, being in the IT community, people are very introverted, and they just may not get out a whole lot. You may have to educate them and set boundaries and help them to set boundaries and that sort of thing. In some cases, you've got people that are joining the community from prison is a great example. They're coming in and they're trying to start really from scratch and learn this IT security thing. And it's an opportunity for you to educate them on social boundaries and some of the soft skills, because it's twofold. With great power comes great responsibility. And for us in the IT security community, and I tell Nia this all the time, that bug bites you, and for Mansi and Noureen, it hits you. You're like, oh, this is the coolest thing, and it's that puzzle piece, that the Pandora's box that you open, that you continue just to go down that trail, and it's continue, because technology doesn't stand still; it continues to develop. It's this, and it's a cat and mouse game in cybersecurity. As soon as the defenders get good at defending, the adversaries get good at attacking. So it's that continued process as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, William. I want to hear from Mansi on your perspective on the government side on this question too. Mansi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, so
Okay.
from the governance side, you said?
No, on your perspective, what do you guys have in your organization? Do you guys have a resource where you can echo like what William said, who help advocating and breaking barriers in this diversity and understanding how to better make it better going forward?
Yes, so in my experience with the current organization or my current employer, yes, there are, because it's an MNC, that kind of echoing William's point, right? If it's a larger organization, yes, there are ERG kind of things that you can go in if you want to vent out or support system. But I've also been part of small fintechs that don't necessarily have that budget or don't necessarily have that infrastructure to support those ERGs. So at that time, if someone's from that space, right, where there isn't like a ERG within the company, I would suggest reaching out to the local NGOs, for profits, the local kind of grassroots organizations that will kind of be your ERG, so to speak. And then even if you're a leader at a smaller startup or something like that, where the budget or things and issues, just creating a partnership many times has been very fruitful. Even if I speak from an NGO perspective, I've seen that we have reached out to local businesses and just said, you know what, you have folks that you want to train, but perhaps getting a SAN certificate or something is kind of a little bit above their budget or at that where they are. Like, come and join like this boot camp, which is subsidized fee or it's even free for certain individuals and things like that. So get your skill set or get that support from, doesn't necessarily have to be from the four walls of your organization. Though I wish that every organization had that, right? Not even just from an IT, ERG or women or minority, but even to speak about the other global issues that are kind of affecting each of us. Not every company has that infrastructure, unfortunately. But I think that's why we have these grassroots organizations, which I'm very passionate about, obviously, where we can connect with them and say, hey, for now, let's make this partnership, help our employees feel a little bit more empowered. And, and then it's a win-win for both sides too. So that's been my experience.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know, Terry, your organization, you guys do a lot of work in the community, helping people prepare themselves in this career industry and even advocating and helping them transition. So thank you for what you guys do. I don't know, Nia, can you see the questions from the audience in the meantime? Because we don't want to shut them off and just us talking to them. We want to hear from them too, which will be very good. And while Nia is doing that, any question, Nia, so far? From the audience? Nothing, right?
No, there's nothing. No, I think we're hitting it.
I guess we're nailing it, right? I like what Mansi said earlier, where she said she went to the CS and she had a conversation with them about, where she wants to move next in her career. For anybody who's listening, who's trying to get into this career industry of cybersecurity or even transition into it, or even us who are already in it, I encourage everybody at least to always have a 3-second sales pitch, always prepared, ready on your lips, right? I practice one in the mirror by myself and I always keep stuttering sometimes, but I get it in the 3-second sale. And because what does that do? Because it's that opportunity when it strikes. You never know when it's going to strike, but when it strikes, right, you get it. And you don't want to be you be the person who's going to close the door on yourself because you've done your schooling, you've done your experience and all that stuff. And we can speak about advantages of having diversity, right? Because it brings different mindset, different thinking, different things to the table. I see things differently from the way Mansi might see it or the way Nia will see it. And Terry will come and say, Noureen, I think what you just said it does make sense. This is how I see it. And just that brainstorming like you can see over here, we as panelists, we all from diverse skill sets, but we can able to come together at the same table and share these ideas with you. Having said that, Terry, what benefits have you seen in the industry when we include this diversity to close this gap of cybersecurity? Because they keep saying the gap is too wide. We're not finding the right candidates. Where the people are missing the mark, but it's really not people missing the mark. I think if we appreciate the diversity, it will make it better, right?
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great question. And so when you look at the industry and you start to bring in diversity, I always like to first talk about, hey, what does diversity mean, right? Because
yes,
diversity truly is probably 10% what you can see and 90% what you can't see. For instance, Nia's mentioned a couple times she's a veteran. Well, you can't see that, right? Or you can't see
true.
that someone speaks a second language, right? And so it's important to first understand that everybody is diverse in their own way. And if people are allowed to come into the workforce and they can truly be their authentic selves, right? They can truly be 100% who they are when they come into your environment. That's where the power comes from, and that's where you can start to really see innovation and ideas and thoughts and opinions bubble up that can then take your organization to a much different place than where it currently sits, right? And so I think it's important that you allow people to come in and be themselves. I know you talked about barriers earlier, and that was one thing that I think is very important is people being able to come in and be who they are, because many people when they first start off, they really feel like, hey, I may not fit in, maybe I'm a little different. Could be the way I talk, the way I look, the way I sound, my interest, whatever that is. And ultimately that holds them back and they end up spending energy trying to be something different in order to fit in to the organization, right? And that in itself takes energy. That takes effort, that takes time. And so, I think the advantage of bringing in diverse people is huge when you allow them to be their authentic selves.
I like what you said about authentic self.
Powerful.
It's very important. Yeah, it's very, very powerful because you don't want a tunnel vision mentality, right? Somebody who just sits across the table and all they do is just nod yes, yes, yes to you. Sometimes you wonder, are they nodding yes or they just nodding, yeah, I'm here to go, right? You wanna have that different perspective of ideas. I interviewed somebody one day in a podcast and they talked about how they hired a journalist in their security department. And I was curious, interesting. I like to hear that. Why would you pick a journalist over somebody else who had so many degrees more than a thermometer? We're not going to go there. And they picked up the journalist who did not have any security background. The person told me, I need somebody in my marketing department so they can advocate, they can speak about this product. And who are the best people to talk about a product out there? Journalists, because they know how to give stories, right? And remember, the way you can connect with your audience is by giving a story. So they gave a story about the product and the sales became big and what have you. Now, if we didn't have that mindset of hiring diversity, and I like what Terry said, diversity doesn't just mean color, gender, right? It also means career, what your education path is, background, right? Like a journalist versus somebody who has done engineering. That's a diversity right there because they are all different, coming from different paths, right? So here, the CEO hired the journalist as opposed to this person who had so many degrees, and it worked out so good. So organizations out there and corporations, I really encourage, be open-minded. You never know what value you're going to have at the end of the transaction when you hire somebody else who has different perspective, different mindset, different skill sets, because it's that difference that makes us unique. And that having somebody bring their authentic self, they can come up with brilliant ideas that can launch your organization or corporations to a better place than where you are. And of course, there are those times where we reach we as individuals, even as the panelists here, we've taken time to help others to be barrier breakers in this. So I'm going to ask the panelists again. I like throwing a curveball to my panelists. At least each and every one of you mentioned two things that you've done. One, to give back to the community, two, and also to speak about diversity in your organization. Also give an example so the audience can be able to connect with you. And I'll start with you, Mansi.
Yeah. So, okay, from how I've given back to the community, I volunteered, like I said, mentioned with the local ISA chapter, local ISAPA chapter, since I think the second month of my grad school, when I came to know that these organizations exist. Coming from a chemistry background, I had no idea about them before. And I think that's what spiraled and put me now towards this motion where I'm leading an international nonprofit that's aimed and kind of niche at this industry. And I think the way I've brought that to the corporate environment where I work is to forge those partnerships between the organization and the nonprofit. I think one, it serves both organizations, but two, because sometimes everyone's ready, right? No one's going to say like, oh, we don't want to do this. They're like, okay, I want to help GNI. I want to have our employees go and have boot camps and things like that. But I where like that's, and especially leaders who are at the CISO level and C executive level, right? They're always bombarded with things that we're just like, I don't have time to research this. So someone, instead of being problem oriented, let's be solution oriented. So in that same lunch conversation, I was like, have you heard about WSC? Like, look, they're having this free conference next weekend. Like, would you or anyone in our organization be interested? He's like, that's a great idea. And then we send out a mass email to the entire org, right? And usually that's from the MNC perspective, that's usually not greatly viewed or liked or something. But he was so into it, he just needed that, like someone to just be like, hey, this is an option.
Guidance, yes.
Yes, so I think that's something that we can all do. I don't think we always have to just be like, oh, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. But here is something that we can do instead, right? So having that perspective is key.
Awesome. So here you come in from with a chemistry degree, right, in school, right? Yes. And now here you are in Women in Cyberjutsu, helping women in this industry of cybersecurity, combining those and advocating it in your organizations, having these CEOs participate and volunteer and help, helping the community. Fabulous. I like that. Terry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved in several things. One of those here, an organization called Perscolis. It is a workforce development type organization. I'm on the board for them, and so I spend time, trying to help with funding and different things, because I think 85%, 90% of the students that we bring in don't have any IT experience at all, and we've got a great placement rate. So I spend time there. I spend time at my alma mater, where I went to school at, making sure that we're bringing in, diversity when it comes to the student population. And then internally, I mean, that's my job, right? I mean, now for the last year and a half, I mean, I'm 100% focused on inclusion and diversity. So whether that be hiring in all of our offices across the country, we want to be at 50% female in every office. We want the people of color percentage to reflect the census in that market. I spend a lot of time with our employee resource groups in the organization to make sure that they're striving and they're healthy. And as I said earlier, with our customers, I spend a lot of time there. And so it's been really neat for me to have kind of, I guess, done a 180 when it comes to my career. I know Nia had mentioned she had done the same at some point in her career. And so it's really great work, and I enjoy it. And so, internally, we're doing what we call conversations that matter now once a quarter, where each of our offices is spending, about 3 hours. We're actually doing those last week and this week, talking about a particular subject. And, this time it's about race and bias and how those two things intersect. And that's been really good when you talk about driving inclusion through an organization. And so I've been spending a lot of time doing that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry. Nia?
So I can sit and talk about all the nonprofit work that I do. But I think
I've got a story I want to tell.
I got a couple stories. But I think for me, it definitely, there's two that come to mind, and it has to do with the ongoing amazing partnership that I'm involved with, Will's involved with FTCC, which is a local community college that we have here. What it does is it brings everything the ISSA Fort Bragg has to offer, right, to directly to the community, right? A lot of those students have nothing to do with cybersecurity. This is their first exposure to it. So we're bringing them training, we're bringing them professionals in the industry, we're bringing them mentorship, resume review, all of it. Every month now we're on a virtual platform, but it doesn't change what we're bringing to the table. Myself and our communications director, we sit on the board of advisors for their cybersecurity team for the college, and we get involved in that way. And yes, it's time consuming, but it is so worth it because it's pulling that diversity inclusion right into the conversation, right, with the important people, and it's having those uncomfortably comfortable conversations about how can we be better, what can we change, what does that look like, what does this partnership look like, where are your relationships, right, and kind of molding it out into something that it wasn't 3 years ago. um, and then the other part of that is yesterday is a great example. I do not like public speaking, which I don't think a lot of people know about me, but I do it. I do it because it makes me uncomfortable and it allows me to grow. But I've been given the opportunity on my internal team to bring that to the table and start speaking on things like some really, my next week's topic, for example, is CUI and encryption, right? So it's something that's coming, it's something that we're going to need to be doing, but give a talk on it. Why? Because I'm used to giving webinar talks. Not everybody's comfortable with it, but it's pulling something that I guess could be an oversight or people don't necessarily see as a strength and being like, hey, you can do this too, but here's how. Let me show you. Not let me tell you, not read it on a website. Here's a hyperlink. It's let me teach you. And I'm not
Mm,
going to hold your hand as we do this, but let me show you. If you have any questions, I'm here every step of the way. So those are my two.
nice. Thank you. And Will?
Hey, so the organization that Nia and I are part of, we volunteer our time for the ISSA chapter down in Fayetteville. I'm one of the founders. Nia's one of the founders. And when we started the organization, it was really focused on military people that are transitioning into the civilian side. And in the first 2 months, we realized that the community down there at large was highly underserved and didn't realize that there were cybersecurity communities out there to be a part of. So we began to be more inclusive and with people that are non-IT, non-cybersecurity, but the at large. And looking to what is the first step? What is that first step into IT? What is that first step into something better than working at an undervalued job that they felt undervalued. So we started transforming and being more inclusive of just again people at large. And then one day Nia walked up to me and we were having a very candid conversation, a very crucial conversation. And Nia was like, "Where are all the women at? There's a bunch of dudes." There's a bunch of dudes here and there's no ladies here. Where are all the ladies at? And I was like, I don't know. So this was, again, we were a very small chapter. We were 5 people at a meeting at a time. It was mostly us as founders coming in and having some really crucial conversations about IT and cybersecurity community. But we created a community that's grown quite a good bit over the years. But having that critical conversation allowed her to say, okay, well, if to reach out to other underserved communities and the other nonprofits and to look at that, because again, ISSA and some of these communities, some people just don't feel like they fit in. These biases, that we as humans carry with us. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Great book if you want to understand scientifically what it is to have a human bias for things. And the gentleman put about 40 years of his life in research and had lost his partner to doing the research to prove that we as humans have a bias. So that's one of the other areas. And I'm a community member in the cybersecurity community. I try to go to most everything because cybersecurity is a passion of mine, and I bring the cybersecurity, the compliance, and the privacy together, and try to understand all three of the worlds because they are under the same universe of cybersecurity, but they are on different planets in some cases. So that's one area, and the other area is going to all. I'm a part of Raleigh ISSA. I'm a part of the Fayetteville ISSA. There are other communities that I'm a alliance partner with, or I don't know if it's alliance partner, but I'm an advocate for their nonprofits and what have you. But and then I'm a mentor and I'm a mentee as well. So I take those into effect and into account. And your elevator pitch idea, that being an advocate for yourself and understanding that understanding how you speak and when you speak and what you say. And in many cases, your own personal bias will get in your way. Mine does all the time, especially if I get starstruck. I was starstruck the other day. I was speaking to someone and I realized they were working on something I had been reading on and I did my postgraduate work on. And I was like, it took my breath away. I was like, I felt like a kid, but even to that respect, understanding being authentic. And Terry brought up a really good subject matter is being authentic and knowing that you are vulnerable and to be vulnerable and to express that vulnerability in a meaningful way and know that when you have built that trust with your trust, partners and people that you trust, that they understand that they're vulnerable and can be vulnerable and to you as well. So that's just a few areas I wanted to touch on, but I think I covered the subject matter.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And we together on the ISSA here in Raleigh too. So it's a small community. So and here we are sharing the panel together, right? But to my audience, what do we learn from our panelists? Each and every one of us, even though we work at different organizations or corporations, we participate in the communities. Why? Because you talk the talk and walk the walk. If what you're doing in your community, you bring it into the office, it becomes natural. You become a natural advocate. You become a natural voice for the voiceless, right? Speaking those engagements where you see when something is not going right, you become the advocate to raise up and say, I don't think the way you say that was right. Maybe you have a different perspective, but I don't think the other person took it that way, right? Because it becomes natural in you because you can't just go in the office 9 to 5, act a certain way, then go back to your community and act a different way. You do it in your community, you do it at work. We all participate in various cybersecurity organizations. For me, I do a lot of mentoring. I launched a global mentoring program here at Cisco because I like to hear all across the globe from others. What are your challenges in finding a mentor? What are your challenges in this cybersecurity industry? Yes, cybersecurity is not just a U.S. situation. It's a global, right? When cyber attacks come, they don't just target America. They target everyone, everywhere across the world, right? And hearing from others what challenges you're experiencing over there in other parts of the country is very important to hear from them because you have to be, one, open-minded, right? And be ready to listen, not just hear, listen to what others are saying. And then from there, then you'll be able to provide good input or assistance as you guide them and mentor them and become their advocate for them, which is very, very important. There are tons of resources where you can go to learn. Many of our peer panelists mentioned them here. You can reach out to us on social media platforms if you want to carry on this conversation further and you have any other questions. Of course, connect with us because we've talked about 3 things. If nothing else you remember from this panel, just remember these 3 things that we've highlighted. Education. Everybody needs to get your education. You need to do something for yourself. Advocate for yourself by getting that education, right? Experience. Maybe some of you don't have a job, but you can build that experience by contributing to your community, writing blogs, asking others to help you reflect on the blogs that you've written. That shows you're contributing to the industry, even though you don't have a career at the moment, right? And exposure. It's all about networking. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can open a door for you, right? Today it's me, tomorrow it's you. So education, experience, and exposure. Bring your authentic self, right? And always be prepared for that opportunity that may not be existing right now, but who knows, it might tap in the next second, next 1 hour. And for our corporate leaders and those leaders in organizations, be open to change. Be open to hire somebody of a different diverse who's going to bring something different to your corporation. And if you don't have such a program, initiate one. If you don't even know where to start, launch a survey and ask people who want to participate in creating such a resource where people can come and speak, share their voices, get their voices heard without being scrutinized, right, or being judged for what they say. Have an open, candid conversation that brings a better industry, better community, and we can all make it better for each and every one of us. Nia, I don't know about the time, but do you have any questions, or are we about to wrap it up?
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for hanging around. I think we had one person drop off, and that's fine. This was recorded, and
Okay.
but I really just want to say thank you. I think this was amazing, and
Yes.
I know I've learned a lot. So
I did learn a lot too from each and every one of the panelists here.
Yes.
Again, we were it's a unique panel because we don't just follow a script. We become like Terry said, we brought our authentic self and we just went with the flow.
Very powerful. And I wanted to thank everybody on the call as well. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and be an advocate for change and be an advocate for being authentic, and being your authentic self. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the ISSA Triad for letting me and all of us have this opportunity to speak to the audience. So thank you for that.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, and you have a nice day and stay safe.
All right.